Well, Florida is finally looking to remove a restriction it has placed upon gun owners for a number of different years. And this restriction specifically, these two restrictions, have made the state look more like California than any deep red Republican conservative state in the South when it comes to gun laws. And we're going to talk about what's going to be removed finally for gun owners down there and the effect it's had on law-abiding gun owners and how ineffective it's been at its core mission, which is basically eliminating due process all the way around. Now, of course, I want to hear your opinion. If you live in Florida, if you've been affected by this, let us know your stories down below. If you agree or disagree with my opinion, let me know that too. Let's go ahead and jump right in. So Ron DeSantis finally made an announcement about red flag laws.
Go in and say, this person's a danger, they should have their firearms taken away, which is property in addition to being something connected with a constitutional right. And then the burden shifts where you have to prove to a court that you are not a menace or a threat. That's not the way due process works.
I didn't know if he was actually going to address this. Even though he's talked about it in the past, it's been more so of a kind of a, I don't know, lukewarm approach to it, right? I didn't know if this was finally going to get brought to some kind of legislative process, right? So it could go back and eliminate your red flag laws, specifically, even though he has talked about the age limit. Now, there's a couple of different things here. Red flag laws, Baker Act, age limit. So the minimum age was raised from 18 to 21. There's also something else that's attached to that that has really affected gun owners, by the way, that I want to talk about here in a minute. Then you have the emergency protection orders, the red flag laws. Then you have the Baker Act. So essentially, after Marjorie Stoneman Douglas tragedy, they enacted this legislation. They enacted this law. They were able to pass it through both chambers, and Rick Scott, the governor at the time, signed it into law. Now, the Baker Act actually allows family members to turn in other family members that they deem a potential hazard to themselves or other people, while the red flag law requires law enforcement to do the same, even though law enforcement can take evidence, if you will, from family members as well. So there's kind of this debate like, oh, well, you know, family members can't just turn in each other in Florida under their red flag laws. But that's not entirely true, because the Baker Act actually allows family members specifically to turn in other family members. This can last for upwards of a year or longer. It depends on who the judge is and if they deem you righteous enough to be able to own those firearms once again. There was one circuit judge down there that said, yeah, twice a week I'm basically making a decision on who gets to own a gun and who doesn't. And they tout this as some kind of fantastic thing. And the problem is, when people hear about a red flag law, they're like, okay, so people that are, you know, talking about doing harm to other people are turned in, their guns are taken away from, this is actually saving lives. But nothing could be further from the truth. Essentially, you are taking away people's rights before they ever even commit a crime. Also, I found this list of tragedies that have happened where no family member, no law enforcement ever turned these people in, and guess what? They still were able to enact on their despicable actions anyways. Plus, if people are already brandishing or threatening or, you know, domestic issues or whatever, they're already breaking the law. Why do you have to have another one? That's how one side of the aisle thinks. It's like, hey, we can legislate our way to guns being removed from bad people, and that's just not the way this works, because criminals and whoever else, they're going to break the law. The only people that you affect is law-abiding people. That's it. And while there may be one or two that you actually do help, you cannot tell the rest of the country or the rest of the state that, hey, we're going to convict you essentially of a crime before you commit the crime because we think you might commit this crime, or somebody else told us that they think you're going to commit a crime. It's an ass-backwards way of doing anything, and it goes against everything that we believe in our Constitution. The other problem with this, and again, it affects law-abiding gun owners, and now you have a 3-day waiting period for long guns. So at 18, There's a lot of things you can do. If you want to go fight, die for this country, perfectly fine. You want to call for Miller time with your buddies? Whoa, that's too much. You want to buy a handgun? That's ridiculous. And a long gun? No way. You, my friend, are being treated as if you're still a kid because of the mistakes of few. And I've said this before and I'll say it again. I know it's not a great thing and I don't like it either, but there are certain prices that are paid in a free society. And unfortunately, it's just one of them, right? It's either you don't have freedom or you do. And unfortunately, with freedom, sometimes comes really tragic things. But that doesn't mean that other countries and other places with way more restrictions don't have the same amount of violence, because they do. No matter if it's with a truck or a plane or a car or a gun or a brick or a rock, whatever, it doesn't matter. Crime is still going to happen. There's bad people in the world. You can't stop them all. But you certainly shouldn't be able to stop good people from exercising their rights. And that's exactly what these laws have done. It's really shocking, because when you look at the states that pass red flag laws, you would never think, if you didn't know anything about it, you would never think to see Florida right there as one of these states that actually has this law on the books. But they do, and they have a lot of gun owners. And from what I've seen, there's been like 17,000 people. I don't think they can track it necessarily, but they have a certain amount of people that are under red flag laws in the state. And I read, upwards of 17,000 people. Now, there is something that actually passed in this law that I do agree with, and that is beefing up school security. And Ron DeSantis also said that he would have vetoed this, he would have voted against it, whatever, if he were there at the time. But one thing he does like about this is it allows teachers to be armed, right, with a certain amount of training and all that, so they can protect their students adequately, and beefing up security for schools. This is what I've talked about. Why is it so hard when we send so much money? Well, not anymore, but we have sent so much money to other countries, and all of this exposure of money that's been sent to countries for crazy things. I mean, we could go down the list, but y'all have heard some of the crazy numbers and amount of money that's been sent to other countries, ranging from voter confidence to turning mice into another gender. You're talking about millions and millions and millions and billions of dollars. And yet, we can't afford to make sure that every single school has the officers needed to protect that school. Metal detectors. And in really bad schools where violence is up and you want to eliminate that, dogs, right? Some kind of presence there to let these kids know and let their parents know that, hey, we're doing everything we can, and now we have the resources to actually enact this. It is disgusting on a whole nother level. And I'm so glad they are finally exposing what you and me have been paying for. And I think a lot of us are willing to pay for school security, not for voter confidence, and certainly not for turning mice into another gender. It's just absolutely ridiculous. And so that is my opinion on it. And thankfully, Ron DeSantis, like I said, I didn't know that he was actually going to do anything about this, because this is what I think it's his second term now, but he's finally brought it to the table, and I hope that it gets passed for Floridians to remove your name from the list of states with restrictions like Illinois and California. There you go. There's my opinion. Let me know what you think down below. If you like what I do, consider subscribing. See you in the next one. And as always, hold them down.